In September 2020, the Amazon sellers community was stunned that Ed Rosenberg was the lead defendant in a $100 million conspiracy involving DOJ and Amazon. Ed had denied it for years. These are the facts. ASGTG stands for Amazon Sellers Group Telegram. Ed started selling online when eBay launched in 1997. In 2010, Ed also started selling on Amazon. Ed sold motorcycle audio parts, printers, printer accessories, and consumer electronics. In 2015, after his seller account was unfairly suspended, Ed observed that there was no way for sellers to communicate with each other and resolve difficult selling issues. He also noticed the suspension process was murky. There was a need for a seller's community. Ed hired somebody for the account suspension, and he was eventually reinstated. He then opened up a WhatsApp group, which started the ASGTG community. The WhatsApp group had a 99-person capacity, and it filled up within a day. So Ed moved the group to Telegram because it has unlimited member capacity. The group grew. Eventually, it became a seller's network. Today, ASGTG consists of a Facebook group of 77,300 members and is the most influential group on compliance for sellers. WhatsApp, 3,700 people. The weekly email list is 45,000 people. Twitter, 12.5 thousand followers. Instagram, Reddit community, Slack. The stated goal of ASGTG is to help sellers via official legitimate channels. That is because in 2015, and even today, many international sellers are promoting black hat selling, which is against the rules, illegal activity with insiders, and disadvantaging legitimate US sellers.
I was unaware until very recently how sophisticated some of the black hat tactics have become to attack our listings on Amazon, to harm our ranking, and to therefore harm our sales and profitability.
Everything about ASGTG obviously is above board. It's all open APIs, and anyone can export the entire group to verify. Telegram has a tool to export data from a group. ASGTG has a tool where all the groups come together in a funnel and you can see all the information ever discussed in ASGTG Telegram community. ASGTG are rule followers trying to create a white hat pathway for legitimate sellers. Ed has written over 500 weekly blogs, and every blog post promotes following the rules. All of the forums, events, and functions are all pro-Amazon, pro-TOS almost to a fault. What happened is that Ed would be helping lots of sellers, always for free at that point, and he would see that sellers would get stuck at a certain point in the appeals process when there's no next step. It was not just a lack of information. It was a lack of a functioning working process within Amazon. This led to illegal insiders opening accounts via bribery and fraud accounts open. So, imagine that you're a $50 million a year seller who's suspended erroneously or the victim of heavy-handed enforcement. The sellers will come to Ed after multiple appeals and no resolution, and their only option was a legal insider reinstatement or to shut down.
On Friday, we were headed out of town to see our grandchildren, and both of our phones lit up with text that our account had been deactivated. Kind of a big shock. We turned around and drove back home, called the account health folks that we had been working with quite a bit, and they researched and said it was an old case.
Coming in from outside in the middle of the afternoon and looked down at my phone and said, we're suspended? That doesn't make any sense. There were no warnings. There were no emails. There were no notifications. There were no account health, anythings.
I always said with Amazon, nobody in Amazon is cruel, but cruel things happen, and therefore it's Amazon's responsibility.
I received a notification that I was suspended for seller code of conduct. I had no idea what I could have done. For months, I've been sending appeals, just going through notifications for restricted products.
We never done this thing at all, but they're blaming on us.
So Ed started yelling at Amazon that there were gaps in the process for a legitimate seller and the good guys are being disadvantaged. So Amazon allowed Ed to contact them when this occurred to prevent these businesses from closing or the need for illegal bribery reinstatement. Ed would contact one of these Amazon executives who knew him from social media, and he would escalate a summary of the information to them to review, and Amazon would often reinstate the account based on the merits. This stopped corruption. Legitimate sellers knew Ed as the person to go to when you're at the end of the appeals process and tried everything. Amazon loved it and was all on board. ASGTG was helping sellers to be compliant, teaching them the rules, and when the seller would get stuck, Ed would send it to the executives. And then Amazon would use this as a use case to fix it and make sure it wouldn't happen again. As the group grew and Ed was busy running it all day with everybody asking him questions, his Amazon business was faltering and he was losing the will to keep it going. Ed felt running the ASGTG was his calling. Ed was going to be the seller's liaison to Amazon and the leader of the Amazon sellers community to give a voice to legitimate sellers when they get shafted by an errant bot or bad communication and policy from Amazon.
No notification, no reasons why. And here I am, thousands of units stranded in Amazon. There's over 1,000 units in the prep center, and I've not managed to get anywhere.
Is it legal to be charged for ads, but the products are blocked? So we're blocked in California, we're blocked in Amazon Business, but the ads still show up. So each of those areas is 20% of the market.
Falsely accused and they're not giving you an opportunity to respond?
100%. Absolutely. Like I said, and I've told you before, no A to Z claims, no chargebacks, 99% positive.
He also does a lot of other things to help sellers. For example, there's a group to find jobs, there's a group to rent warehouses, and a group for any niche needed for an Amazon seller. There are instant alerts, important policy updates, petitions, and endless information he provides sellers. There's also a very valuable tool, search at ASGTG.com, in which one can put in a brand, and a bot will search years of ASGTG history for that brand, which is helpful for preventing IP complaints. In addition, Telegram had a lot of spam. Ed wanted to make sure that everyone is comfortable and to keep out black hat illegal activity. So he paid for a bot, which cost him over $100,000 in order to keep everything above board that helps him moderate the forums. Now, this paid for itself because he had the events and some paid consulting. He has a third-party service tool with some affiliate links. So Ed does nibble at the edges, but ASGTG is primarily known as an advocacy group for legitimate sellers in a very real way, which explains why it's so large.
So this guy advocates on behalf of Amazon sellers more than anybody else I've ever seen in my career with Amazon. I got to give this guy mad props. Ed Rosenberg, that's the guy right there. Huge fan of Ed. Big shout out to Ed. If you know Ed, send him a copy of this video so he can feel good. Ed, you have honestly really impressed me. No person in the Amazon community has done more advocating for policy changes at Amazon. And I would be honored to serve on an association with you if we ever made one.
Because it's not a consulting company where he's looking for leads. So how does Ed become the lead defendant of a $100 million conspiracy? When you're out there in a semi-public manner, as Ed is, there are these dark people at the fringes of society who want to bring you down. So what happened is that in October 2017, Ed was being threatened with a mass email attack after his email list and emails were hacked by bad actors. They were threatening to mass email the group with false and defamatory information, which Ed was trying to avoid. So every once in a while, through a side chat like Telegram, Ed would get a threat which explains the few out-of-character emails. Ed was trying to avoid a mass email attack against him and the Amazon executives he was doing the escalations with, so he communicated with his attackers. He was eventually mass emailed on September 24, 2019. So for example, the bad actors will email, "We could do review manipulation." Ed would respond, "Hey, great," because there was a gun to his head from side chats. And if you remove the blackmail and you look at just that conversation, it looks a bit incriminating. But regardless, he would not do it. He stopped right after the emails, so no seller corroborated anything against him because he never actually did it. The investigation didn't know the important additional background story to explain the few seemingly incriminating emails. Ed was just trying to prevent mass email attacks against him, the Amazon executives, and his group. As for the story with the cash in the Uber, the Black Hatters wanted cash and requested he send cash for a hazmat approval. Ed made sure it was just North Face jackets that were incorrectly flagged as hazmat and sent the cash. Even while being blackmailed, Ed had Amazon's back.
I just got over the phone. The PI just called me. He said on a scale from 1 to 10, the meeting with Ed was an 11. Whoo! Sweet. He said it went way better than expected. He said Ed was shaking, he was scared, he was nervous. He asked them exactly what way his name came up in the investigation. They said it's an ongoing investigation, so they cannot comment on it. And I asked him, so just some general random questions about him, if he screens, when a guy comes to help with an issue, if he screens them to see if they're selling, if they're selling a counterfeit or not, whatever, some bullshit like that. But they said it lasted about almost 30 minutes. He was pink, blushing. He was pink, blue, and purple, and green, I believe his words were. And he was shaking. So, not the worst thing for a couple $100.
Anything done with the others in the conspiracy was just communication to prevent a mass email attack. Now, what happened with the $100 million scheme? Ed had this ethical escalation path to Amazon executives happening again and again. He reinstated 1,200 accounts this way, which was independent of the 10,000 cases his appeals team had worked on. Nothing is done more to stop corruption than this, as Amazon makes decisions based on the merits on these accounts. What happened was that a seller went to these black hat guys and the black hatters, then came to Ed and said that the seller was legit and asked him if he could help reinstate it. Ed spoke to the seller.
We have total around 250 employees, 30 in the US, 200 in China, and 10 in Europe.
He found out afterward that the seller first went to the black hat guys and offered $200,000 for illegal insider reinstatement. That illegal insider reinstatement didn't work. Ed didn't know about that conversation at the time. Ed had a few emails and communication back and forth with the seller and the Amazon executives. He then did the legitimate escalation to Amazon, as he did for over 1,200 accounts, to the highest person in Amazon seller performance, and the account was reinstated. Afterward, this seller then told the black hatters that he was back on Amazon. Shortly thereafter, $55,000 was thrown into Ed's account to frame him. Ed did not recognize the name of the company that sent the funds at the time. It was the Black Hat consultants using a company name Ed didn't know, the ones blackmailing him and terrorizing him for years. Those Black Hat consultants then said to each other that Ed paid someone high up. That's, of course, not true. Ed did an act of kindness to a seller he didn't know and then got framed by terrorizing consultants. All he did was send a summary email of the seller's situation to an executive at Amazon. It was opened 100% legitimately and for free, saving this huge business. The Black Hat consultants said to each other that he paid someone, so now it looked like Ed was part of them when he was framed after he did an act of kindness. Ed was not in that conversation. So that was the $100 million scheme. This seller did $100 million in business after Ed legitimately opened the account for free. It looked like Ed, this senior executive at Amazon, and these bad folks who were blackmailing Ed, which forced the connection, were all part of one large conspiracy. It was not. Ed did an escalation to help this false suspension and was not part of any conspiracy. The feds got fooled repeatedly, not knowing who the good and bad guys were. So that explains the $100 million scheme. Now it gets really bad. Anything those bad consultants ever did were connected to Ed. Imagine sitting on a bench waiting for a bus and then getting blamed for killing 100 people because a mass murderer sat on the bench 2 weeks earlier. You get blamed for being part of the conspiracy. Ed was being blamed for sabotage, cash and llama, insider reinstatement, and many horrible things those others did that Ed didn't even know about until he read the indictment. So the main account, Client 1, Ed opened legitimately. That's his entire involvement in this conspiracy. He then got connected to these people who framed him, blackmailed him, hacked him, terrorized him, mass emailed him, and then he became part of them because the feds were desperate to make him part of the conspiracy when he was obviously the victim. So if you go through the original indictment, first they said that he was a lead defendant in a $100 million scheme. He was not. It was an act of kindness. It was a $100 million windfall that Amazon made. If you add the 1,200 legitimate escalations and count each one 1,200 times $100 million, it ends up being that Amazon, according to this indictment math, made $1.2 trillion just from the escalations. A misunderstanding of the facts. So now you'll wonder, why didn't Ed get his day in court? He should just say the story and he'll win. So let me explain a bit about how the DOJ works. Nobody spoke to Ed before he was indicted. Had they spoken to him for 5 minutes, this tragedy would not have happened, which is a real breakdown in the justice system. But it seems like what happens is that Amazon has these connections in the DOJ. They say there's corruption in Amazon, and yes, there is, and we think Ed Rosenberg is a major player. And it seems that Amazon, who hires hundreds of former federal prosecutors, writes the indictment and puts circles around people. They put a circle around Ed because he was whistleblowing on how Amazon sometimes mistreats legitimate U.S. sellers and weaponized the DOJ as a way to take down the voice of the sellers community. They know the process is the punishment. Had the DOJ pulled the camera back and even Googled his name, they would realize how ridiculous it is to think Ed was involved in black hat activity, and the seemingly incriminating story must have additional context. They didn't follow the facts. And people know Ed as an Amazon person who has connections that seem legit, but they said maybe Ed made a mistake, maybe he's two-faced. But no one ever found corroborating evidence that he did anything against the rules as it goes against the ASGTG brand. That is why the seller community didn't believe it, as it seemed outlandish.
How many people here have been suspended before? Has anybody been suspended unfairly? How many of you feel that at any moment you can get suspended for no reason? Now, this is pretty much the reason of why I started this group. It grew to a lot larger than I thought. First of all, I couldn't believe the awesome power that Amazon has, how somebody can have literally a $50 million a year business, and from second to second, it's gone. The way to fix this issue is to communicate, be better sellers, and to work with Amazon. And then at the same time, have Amazon realize the issues and then fix it. Because the people that I've met from Amazon have been just the nicest, most wonderful people in the world, and it didn't really match this image that I and many in this room may have, that how from second to second, for no reason, they can suspend you.
My name's Adria Mino. I've been working with Amazon for 11 years, about 6 years within the formerly known as seller performance space. Currently it's called account health.
However, for the outside community, it seemed believable from a distance. Now, what happens when you're accused of a crime? You're shamed endlessly across the world with a stream of false press releases. Your ability to make money normally goes down to zero. Ed was able to continue to ASGTG because the accusation seemed outlandish, but many people believe regardless of the contradictions. Amazon plus DOJ has hundreds of millions of dollars to defend this and try to make it look accurate. Ed does not. You need millions to try to fight this, and it can take years, and there's no way of knowing how much it is. It's not a flat rate. Lena Khan of the FTC has stated that they get outnumbered 10-1 when they take on Amazon.
If they have monopoly money, they can buy as many lawyers as they want. I mean, the FTC is around 1,200 employees. But when we're going up against some of these monopolistic companies, they can outmatch us, outgun us, sometimes 1 to 10, just if you're looking at lawyers. If you're adding paralegals and support
If you're
staff,
just looking at lawyers, they outnumber you 10-1.
Ed needed to hire lawyers in Seattle and New York. It could cost $5 million or maybe $30 million. There have been cases of $40 million. So there's no chance of going to trial, which is unfair how they indict a hardworking, by-the-book family man paying taxes his whole life without a chance to explain. And then once falsely indicted, there's no practical way of defending yourself. Let's assume Ed had the funds. There are still practical obstacles to going to trial. The reason is that when you're indicted, if you accept a plea, the punishment is often a fraction of the punishment had you lost in trial. For example, if you look at the Sam Bankman-Fried case, he got 25 years in jail after he lost in trial. The others who pleaded got 2 years. What happens is that if you fight it, they look at it like you have nerve and they give you a massive trial tax and all kinds of other disadvantages for exercising your due process. They're not going to have to prove a $100 million fraud. All they have to prove is one email which they say Ed handled wrong, even if it's not true. Amazon plus DOJ will have hundreds of lawyers saying that he was wrong and now he's liable for the whole indictment. This is unfair, but the reality of how it works is why so many innocent people plea. So, one email deemed incorrect will make him responsible for what everyone else did, and he could face 30 years in jail. He was offered just 2 years probation. This is not justice. Ed also made many successful third-party petitions, and the point of the petitions was that often sellers were getting a bad shake from Amazon, and if sellers could get a lot of signatures together on one petition, then Amazon could see it. Those sellers could be helped and fix the issue at the root cause level.
I had a couple of alerts about many accounts being suspended for, controversial rights owner complaints, and somebody just suggested a petition, so I just, within 15 minutes, I just wrote something up and I made a petition. Good morning, everybody. It's November 11. By the time you you watch this video, we're going to be past 5,000, which is really incredible. Hello everybody, it's November 13, Wednesday night, and we're way past 7,000, so that's amazing work. Good morning everyone, it's November 19. I want to give a little bit of an update what's going on with the petition yesterday. There was some confusion.
Ed did a hashtag Work With Us Amazon petition, which was the largest petition ever in third-party sellers' history, which got over 12,500 signatures. Sellers were getting suspended for one IP complaint, most of the time false, and you then have these legitimate sellers being tortured and tormented and the businesses destroyed for one IP complaint.
It's devastating because we are a good seller from what I know. I mean, I've seen our feedback scores are over 95% positive.
All of a sudden, we in the morning, they just deactivated our account and we had no clue why they did it. They just emailed us due to Section F or Section 3.
The result was that an Amazon executive called him up and over 40 accounts were reinstated. As a seller liaison, Ed would often get involved if there were issues between Amazon and sellers. There were these two horrific black hat sellers who were destroying the entire supplement category. Ed spoke to both of them and negotiated with them that 7 accounts would get open and they would stop all attacks. Amazon accepted Ed's deal and the 7 accounts agreed upon were open. This was via official Amazon channels. 2 days later, the feud erupted again. During the feud, the Black Hatters were trying to figure out which Amazon employee called and opened the 7 accounts, thinking it was done via bribery when, in fact, it was done legitimately by ASGTG and Amazon via official channels, as it always is. Now that employee used a fake alias, Mike, when calling the sellers. But Ed knew who it was from his multiple meetings in Seattle as an official seller's liaison. The two sellers started threatening Ed to reveal Mike's identity, but Ed once again protected Amazon and did the right thing by not revealing it. After the indictment, Ed was speaking to that same employee who had opened over 300 accounts for Ed and the 7 from the deal, and Ed advised that when he calls sellers for his own safety, he should not use the same alias Mike, a friendly FYI. However, Amazon Legal took out those words, for your own safety, and weaponized the process by falsely claiming Ed issued a vile threat to his employee when he did not. It was the same strategy they used for the whole indictment. They put the camera down on half an act, ignored the context and narrative, and tried to create something that wasn't there by weaponizing the process. If you look at the LIBOR scandal, what happened is that Deutsche Bank was getting complaints that they were not being strict on fraud and wanted to make a statement. They found 19 mid-level employees who they claimed were rigging the mortgage markets. The defendants were all saying that it was regular business. The result was that one person sat in jail for 5 years and many others for less. One person committed suicide. Now, one of the employees who kept appealing and trying to explain the truth eventually prevailed, and all 19 were exonerated. Because these companies have former federal prosecutors who have backdoor connections to the DOJ, the company pre-writes the indictment and uses its political weight to make it happen. The result is that Amazon can bring down any person not in the interest of justice, as they did to Ed Rosenberg and some good folks in the Amy Nelson case. In Ed's case, at a surface level, the indictment seemed correct. Ed is a big name, and there's a lot of corruption on Amazon, and he seems to have nefarious connections to Amazon. It seemed like a slam dunk without appropriate questioning of the facts. It was top down, not bottom up. Amazon never told the DOJ that Ed was invited into the front doors at Amazon. The result is that Amazon pre-writes the indictment, which made sense at a surface level, but then crumbled when faced with the context and narrative. In Ed's case, when you find the additional information, in this case the frame job and the blackmail, had they actually investigated this case from the ground up, this tragedy would not have happened. They would have realized it's ridiculous that Ed would be involved in sabotage, insider reinstatement. Ed only works via legitimate channels and above board. As a matter of fact, Ed has worked with senior Amazon leadership trying to smooth out policy and fix the process at a systemic level as well, and nobody at Amazon questioned his integrity. They put a circle around Ed and got it wrong. Ed eventually pleaded guilty after he was guaranteed only probation and would be allowed to continue helping legitimate sellers.
This is Ed Rosenberg speaking. I have included below this video an important written message. The written message below is an apology about a crime I am pleading guilty to. Please read this message.
Ed pleaded to possession of internal annotations. Ed found out about Annotations from legitimate consultants and lawyers when he started running the group back in 2015 when he was sending them suspension leads. It was always viewed as legitimate, never enforced by Amazon as a policy violation. These consultants would say they are checking the notes. Ed started inquiring, what does it mean checking the notes? Internal annotations are notes that are readily available on Facebook and websites for $50. It gives you a bit more information on an account. It cannot help you open a fraud account. It's low-level seller support, and Amazon never seemed to care if used, and it is still available today.
You know, what's still going on? Are people still buying screenshots of internal account info from their competitors or on their own account? I think if you ask 90-something% of the Amazon seller community, they'll say, yeah, we see these screenshots all the time.
100% of long-term accounts would be guilty using the metrics used against Ed, which made this entire indictment a waste and an injustice. The result is that when sellers would come to Ed with the notes showing them, it's a false suspension. If Ed escalated this to an executive as an act of kindness, Ed is corrupt. If the seller does not show him, he's also corrupt because he sent false information. And if a seller went to an illegal insider and then went to Ed, that makes Ed corrupt as well. So clearly, this was a no-win situation. Even though Amazon is making the decision to reinstate based on the merits, it stops corruption and helps legitimate sellers. This indictment was not done in the interest of justice. It was done to take away the voice of the seller's community, and the result is that it was done in the interest of injustice. Ed's relationship with Amazon and his role in the seller's community was misunderstood. Ed's the victim. He was hacked, blackmailed, framed, terrorized, mass emailed, and then blamed for what his attackers did to others. The DOJ also tried dozens of times to entrap Ed to show Amazon they delivered. They tried with this guy, Mark Chopper. They also had a notorious black hat consultant send Ed account reinstatement 100% by insider for $5,000. Illegal feedback removal. The DOJ also put up a fake black hat website and a fake black hat Telegram group. They offered 100% guaranteed reinstatement, then offered 200% guaranteed reinstatement, and then they went back to 110% money back. They were desperate to try and find something because they wanted to deliver for Amazon.
With liberty and justice for all.
This was lawfare. Amazon hired them essentially to bring down Ed Rosenberg. This is not the American way.
I have a good friend who got in a lot of legal trouble with Amazon. And his story is very much different than what Amazon's story is. I think I believe his story.
Ed was embarrassed in front of the whole world for 3 years for something he didn't do. If you want to help Ed, please do the following.